Is India heading towards a conflict or a war? A lot of recent exercises, crackdown on propaganda, and alleged US non support for any sort of conflict raises some questions. Is this something routine, or is India preparing for something big? Let's find out. Alright, so firstly, why do we even have to talk about this? So, the reason for that is there have been a lot of reports that the US has signaled limited support to India during a Indo-Pakistani crisis, any sort of future crisis. So, senior American officials and diplomats have conveyed that the US will not automatically align with India in the event of a crisis involving Pakistan. That the Washington's decisions will be guided strictly by its own national interests. Now, I think that this is not very surprising because of the fact that we have never fought a war on anybody else's money or anybody else's support. Every time India has to fight its own war. So why all of this for all of a sudden? It's because it's very likely that the US now requires Pakistan more than India, for the fact that Pakistan has a border with Iran and Pakistan has a border with China. So that makes it very attractive for them to use Pakistan as a fodder to conduct operations inside Iran and inside China, which is exactly what their strategy has been in the recent months. Cut off China's oil supplies, cut off their friends, cut off their allies, and that is how you gain control over the dragon. So next up, the second thing was the US ambassador's visit to the Western Command. Now, usually ambassadors do visit military commands like that, but the fact of the US ambassador to India, that is Sergio Gore, who is better known as Snake, so him visiting the Indian Army's Western Command along with the US Indo-Pacific commander Admiral Paparo to the US Indian Army Western Command, does that signal something routine, or does that signal something much more like if you don't control Pakistan, next time you're going to hit them harder or something like that? Because that is very well a possibility. You never know. Now, obviously, you and I will never know what happened inside the meeting with the US ambassador and the top brass of the Indian Army Western Command. But taking them to the Western Command, I mean, if the Indo-Pacific commander had to come, he could have visited the Naval Command, he could have visited the Eastern Command, anywhere else he could have visited. If it was related to China, he would have obviously visited the Eastern Command or the Northern Command, but he specifically went to the Western Command, which has no business near the LAC. So that means that there was some sort of signaling towards Pakistan. Either the US was being told that next time India is going to hit a lot harder if Pakistan decides to do something stupid, which is also a possibility because of the fact that a lot of sleeper cells are being busted by the government recently. A lot of the government is cracking down on radical propaganda online. There's been a lot of this propaganda going on X, that where you see accounts based in Pakistan that have names of Indians and that literally have Indian flags on their names or call themselves proud Indians, and then they post some sort of stupid nonsense like India is helping the US in sinking Iranian ships or allowing US to refuel their aircraft in India, which is not at all true because of the fact that the US India's agreement, the LEMOA, that is called the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Understanding, that is not exactly to be used in war. It is more or less a peacetime. It depends on India allowing the US to dock their ships or land their aircraft for refueling and maintenance. So that could very well is a very well possibility that Pakistan is trying to cause conflict within India because of the fact that India does have a lot of Iran supportive Islamic population as well, which is fine. I mean, everybody has their own opinions about this war. For me, I don't support either side because this war is completely pointless. It is hurting the entire global economy. But I think there could be an attempt to spark communalism. There could be an attempt to spark protests. There could be an attempt to try and get the government in pressure. or with the recent arrests of a lot of ISI related agents, agents at air bases, at naval facilities, near civilian airports, that signals that there could be some sort of scouting for, God forbid, I hope that this is just a hypothetical situation, but some sort of another terrorist attack, which we saw in the Red Fort blast as well, which was failed by our intelligence agencies. That is very interesting that they have been working a lot. Our intelligence agencies have been working overtime just for the fact that we all can be safe. So a lot of people are being arrested, and then the last most important thing is back-to-back exercises. And that is the most interesting thing. Every single week, there is going to be a large-scale army exercise, a large-scale Air Force exercise, a large-scale naval exercise. Indian Air Force going to train with Thailand, going to train with Germany, going to train with the UK, the US obviously in COPE India, or I don't know if India participates in the Red Flag. I think that they do. And then the Navy, back-to-back carrier deployments, back-to-back. And now with the deployments in the Hormuz, that is real-life combat scenario. It's not that in Hormuz you cannot be attacked. Anybody, US can run a false flag operation and try to sink an Indian ship, or Iran can, on one end they can appear friendly, but on the other side the IRGC can fire missiles on Indian ships. So that is a very dangerous situation that requires all the sailors to be alert at all times in the Indian ships. So again, that is also a possibility that would happen. So this is something that is very interesting, specifically the fact that this statement that we have been receiving in open source intelligence, that the US will not signal any support to India, which was very obvious. The US has never supported India against Pakistan. Like, just if you remember 1971, they literally sent their aircraft carrier just to fight India, although that never happened. They got stopped by the Soviets. Or in 1965, when the US kept supplying aid to Pakistan, or in 1999, when the US spoofed GPS signals for Indian troops. And even during 2025 in Operation Sindoor, when the US signaled full support to Pakistan. So again, it is natural for them to be guided by their own interests. It's nothing wrong. If we can be non-aligned, if we can follow our own interests, then the US can do so as well, but not on the expense of our national security. And with the recent arrests of Matthew Van Dyke and a lot of other American citizens scouting with drones everywhere, that is also a serious security threat. And I'm sure our intelligence agencies are working overtime to get done with this issue, see what is actually going on. And that's all I think that is likely happening. So in my opinion, I think this is preparation. It is a contingency preparation. It is not necessarily that we are going to wage war on, say, Pakistan or China. Is like, I don't think any sort of fight is likely with China in this or next year, after how badly Chinese equipment failed, how China has been purging all of their J20 scientists and all of their people who designed the HU9 and all the other systems because of consistent failures in Pakistan, in Venezuela, and now in Iran. So I don't think China, and with China, they are like, we are reopening the flights, we are reopening visas. So it is more like a controlled detente. I don't think there is going to be competition, of course. That does not mean that we are going to end the border problem and we are going to be friends forever. That is not going to happen until the communists are in power in China. But this is definitely a detente, and I think the Indian army also realizes that China does not seem to be in a capacity to fight. It has a lot of its internal problems. So I think this contingency is more or less towards Pakistan, because now Bangladesh also has gotten its software updated, if I would say it in that sense, and they are now being friendly with India again, although we should not be too fast. But the new government has been good with India, and they are also cutting down on all the anti-India rhetoric as well. So this could be a contingency situation with Pakistan, especially with the fact that the Indus Waters Treaty is now in abeyance since almost a year, and Pakistan is going to face a crunch for its water. So you never know, they might attempt to target our dams, and the moment they target our dams, and I think this is one scenario that we should run a war game on. I'm probably going to make a hypothetical scenario on what happens if Pakistan targets Indian dams. So with these back-to-back exercises, the lack of American support, the constant crackdown on propaganda and sleeper cells, and the large-scale military procurements, especially for the Air Force, this is probably signaling that India is not in the short term, but at least in the long term, preparing for a prolonged conflict. Could be. That's all I had to say for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I shall see you all in the next video. Take care and Jai Hind.